In this lesson, I'm going to go over my specific Photoshop workspace, how I set it up, so that you can match your workspace to mine if you are following me in Photoshop yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Photoshop. And once it's loaded, the default welcome screen opens up, and I'm going to go up here to New File and just click on that just to get started. I'm going to change these to, let's go with just a regular canvas size. 1920 by 1080 is pretty much just a standard default screen size. So if you wanted to put them in, you could type in the numbers up here. The only other one that you might want to change is RGB color. Just make sure that it is on RGB and not on CMYK or grayscale or anything like that. RGB color is the color profile for any screen artwork. So let's work in RGB. Click create, and then this is how my Photoshop is set up. I wanted to point out that if you come up here to this tiny little icon up here and click on this, this layout is saved as Siobhan's Workspace. But let's say you open up and you're on something that looks a little bit like this, or maybe even, let me close this. Maybe yours even looks something, something like this. Essentially, you're going to have all of your drawing, painting, manipulation, editing tools on the left-hand side of your screen, and on the right you'll have a load of panels. My personal preference when I'm creating artwork like background designs for animation is to have as much screen space as possible. So the first thing that I do is I tend to collapse these menus back into the side so that they are a little bit, all of these icons are smaller. However, I will grab something like layers, and I'm going to just click and drag that out. And this I will make sure is quite visible. So I'm going to drag it until I see this blue line along the right hand side, and then I will release. And now that's going to be on its own dock, if you like. The other panel that I like to have open is my color panel. And since it's not here, and this is a good example of what to do if you see that something that you want is not already nested into the right, you can just come up to Window and find it from here, from this drop down menu. So here's color, I'm going to click on that, and it opens up as a floating window. Again, I'm going to click and drag it, and this time I'm going to nest it up at the top above layers. So I've now got layers, and I've got my color, and those really are the two most important windows that I need to be able to access throughout the process. Now just be aware that your color window might not look the same as mine. That's not a problem. Yours might very well look like this, or sometimes it can display like this. All it is really is just simply a way of viewing the color spectrum. I like personally to look at it in this color wheel because it gives me a really good kind of quick understanding of where my color is, and also where the saturation of that color or the brightness or darkness of that color is. So this top slider here where it says H, that's the hue essentially. You can drag it along and you'll notice this little cursor going around the wheel. So let's say you want it at green, that's fine. Down on this slider you can set the saturation. So you can have it completely desaturated or a very highly saturated green. And on this slider here where it says B, you can adjust the brightness. So essentially it can be all the way down to the darkest version, which is black, and you can drag it up to the lightest version of that hue. Okay, so then over on the right hand side, these are your brushes, your drawing tools and eraser tools. And as we move through the class, and we'll go step by step through, the entire process of both drawing and painting, I will explain every step that we do, and I'll explain all of the tools that are used. But I just want you to be aware that the main tools that we're going to work with are the brush tool. So if you click on that or hit B on your keyboard, the brush will come up. Up here, you can set the size or the shape of the brush, different parameters like that. You can also come up here and affect the opacity of the brush that you're using, and you can affect the flow. I generally don't ever change the flow of the brush, but I will often drag the opacity of my brush down, just because it can help with painting to give, you know, some nice build-up effects. You can also, when you're in the brush mode, just right click anywhere on the canvas with the brush selected, and that'll give you a very quick access to your brush menu. And later on I'll be talking about the brushes that I've left for you. So I've got a bunch of landscape brushes and some painting brushes, regular painting brushes, that I'll leave for you to download, and you can experiment with them and try out different ones and see which ones are going to give you the effects that you're looking for. When you're painting and you're blending or mixing colors on the go, as you can see, you know, if the opacity is down low, you can paint over a color and create a brand new color essentially. And one of the workflows that I really like to use is, while I'm working with the brush, I can hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard. That is a toggle between whatever tool you're using and the eyedropper. So if I'm in the brush mode and I hit Option or Alt, I can quickly select the new color on my canvas and paint with that, and that provides really nice blending. Okay, another tool that I want to point out and just make sure that you know can identify where it is on your keyboard. Well, two other tools, but the one is the pen tool down here. So just hit P on your keyboard and that should bring up the pen tool. And the way to work with the pen tool is literally to click and drag out these vector points. Once you click onto any space on your canvas, that creates a vector point, and if you click and drag at the same time, you can create handles, and those handles can be moved to affect the shape of the curve that you're drawing. If you check over here, there's a white swatch under my swatches, and that's why this shape looks like there's nothing in it, but it's actually it's filled with white. So to change the color of that, just double click onto the icon of the layer and choose a new color from your color picker. Click OK. The other tool that we will work with a lot for painting is the lasso tool. So up here you can click down, click and hold onto this icon, and you'll see that there's the lasso tool in three different sort of types. There's the regular lasso, the polygon lasso, and magnetic lasso. And I never really use the magnetic one. I just work between the regular lasso and the polygon. But I will be explaining in more detail how to work with these when we get into another section, in a later section in the class. Let me know if you have any questions about how to set up your own Photoshop workspace, and when you're ready, I'll see you in the next lesson.